Alabama battles Texas in the Cotton Bowl New Year's afternoon. Bear Bryant, the winningest coach of all time, will try to crack the Texas jinx. Alabama has never beaten the Longhorns. Phil Snow will follow Alabama's preparation in Dallas this week and give you all the late pregame information. Watch the Cotton Bowl Preview, Thursday night at 6:30 on TV 12.
What do you think of when you think of the Public Service Commission? If negative connotations come to mind, some PSC staff members would sharply disagree. In fact, many are calling this year's PSC, comprised of President Billy Joe Camp, senior member Jim Folsom Jr., and newest commissioner Lynn Greer, a new breed with the public's best interest at heart. But others, especially utility companies, perhaps would call the PSC, well, something else, since this was the year the commission denied just about every major rate increase request it considered. Some say the new breed started when Camp took office last January. Jimmy Samford, now the governor's legal advisor, had resigned, and Camp took office pledging to ensure reliable utility service at the lowest price possible. Remember?
Yes, I remember that oath, and I remember the commitment that I made to the people. I remember it every day.
Do you think you've lived up to that oath?
Well, I think we've done our best to. And I guess some of the utility folks might say that we've lived up to it to too great of an extent.
Then last March, former Commissioner Pete Matthews resigned, citing dissatisfaction with the job, and he was replaced by Lynn Greer, who joined the commission in June. On his first day, Greer sat in on the opening day of South Central Bell's $147 million increase. That hearing lasted 2.5 months, saw 38 witnesses testify, and had hundreds of exhibits filed. It ended with the flat denial of any increase. Commissioner Jim Folsom Jr. was the first to swing the no-increase axe, and the commission even ordered Bell to reduce its rates by $2.3 million.
We had analyzed the case. Our analysts, our accountants, our engineers gave us a complete evaluation of the case, and we looked at the company's rate of return. The rate of return was, they were in pretty good shape.
Alagasco received a partial axing. The company wanted $1.25 million, got $4.3, and appealed to the Supreme Court, which granted $6.2 million under bond. Then the PSC struck again. What started as a regular commission meeting on October 13th turned into just the opposite. This time, Greer motioned to axe Alabama Power's record $325 million request. Commissioner Greer, was it difficult for you to make the motion to deny the power company's record request?
Not really. I had sat in on many hours of the case, and like I say, I think we had everything well prepared, and we made a good decision.
All three cases were appealed. Bell, too, received $65 million under bond, and the power company is still waiting for the High Court to answer its appeal. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Judge Huffman says under state law, the probate clerks are to be paid with funds generated through the probate office. However, he says in the past, the county commission has always paid the full amount of the salaries despite state law. The judge says his office only generates about $15,000 a year, and that the salaries of his two clerks exceed $20,000 annually. Judge Huffman explains that the dispute began in 1979, 2 years after he took office. He says at that time, several citizens filed a class action suit seeking to stop the commission from paying the probate clerk salaries. Huffman says 3rd District Judge Jack Wallace issued a writ ordering the commission to pay 40% of the salaries because of the amount of commission work done by the clerks. At that time, Judge Huffman filed his suit seeking an injunction against the state court for allowing the commission to pay 40% of the salaries instead of the full amount. Judge Huffman says he filed the class action suit on the grounds that the change would be a violation of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Meanwhile, pending a ruling by the court, the commission in November of this year appealed Judge Wallace's order and asked that it be allowed to pay the full amount of the salaries. Then, Judge Huffman says the commission reversed itself earlier this month and voted to once again pay only 40% of the clerk's salaries, with the probate office to pay the remaining 60%. However, federal Judge Truman Hobbs, in response to Judge Huffman's class action suit, has ordered the commission to continue paying the full amount of the salaries until the state Supreme Court makes a ruling on the case. In the meantime, Judge Huffman says he'll seek legislation that would change the current state code and allow the commission to legally pay the clerk salaries out of the general fund budget. From Union Springs, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Once the governor gets the commission's final report, he may decide to use it in his legislative package for the upcoming regular session. Legislators also will get a copy of the report, but it will just be suggestions for proposed legislation. Attorney General Charles Graddick today addressed the commission in its final round of hearings and told them he'd already drawn up one bill to make it illegal to possess stolen food stamps. Graddick also says he'd like to see an escape from a work release center be changed from a misdemeanor to a Class C felony.
Now, if a person has escaped from work release and the guard or law enforcement personnel is not present, does not see it, but later on downtown says, wait a minute, that's old John Smith. He's supposed to be in the work release center. What's he doing down here in the pool hall? Well, he can't go in and arrest that man under our present law without having a warrant in his hand because he didn't see the misdemeanor occur. So we need to change that, make it a Class C felony.
Another change Graddick says he'd like to see is a state law making the possession of a sawed-off shotgun illegal. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
United States Air Force, presented by General Cleveland.
Must set a time and a place for a hearing on such complaint and give notice to all interested parties. This has been done by the Alabama $2,567,169,320. The Consumer Alliance contends that this money was charged illegally to the consumers of the state of Alabama. This not only included the residential customers, but also the commercial and industrial. We feel that the Alabama Power Company should pay back every penny that they collected illegally to the consumers of this state. Do you have any questions?
What you're reading from comes out of the state law?
Yes, it does. This was given to me by my attorneys. And these are the 5 questions I think that's most important, that really explains everything. It tells you not only where it's located, but it also...
Based upon our information, the uninsured loss to the businesses involved is not sufficient to fit into SBA's criteria. There were not enough businesses involved and enough loss that was not insured, and that plays a big factor. Another category that they could fit into, where there are 3 businesses involved, if there's a significant unemployment problem, and that has to be significant because we're talking about 25% of the available workforce, which of course is not the case up there because our information shows 11 people, and based upon the population of Sylacauga, it would take about 3,200 people to be unemployed for them to qualify.
The commissioners say they expect several small, independent, and large utility companies to ask for more money next year. At the top of the commission's docket are Alagasco, seeking a 22% increase, Continental Telephone requesting a 6% rate hike, and General Telephone asking for a $6.3 million rate increase. The commission must also listen to the under-resolved dispute between Alabama Power Company and its electrical workers. The commissioners concede, however, all they can do is listen. The matter must be resolved in federal court. But the new year is also bringing changes at the PSC. A contract has been purchased to study the need for a computer, and the Commission hopes to buy some badly needed automation equipment. Most staff members agree a computer would aid them tremendously in regulating utilities. But all three commissioners say regulating the 43 companies has come a long way since 1915.
We've made a lot of strides here in the past year. We have begun implementing computer capabilities. I see hopefully that computer is in place and operating by this time next year, we hope. I just hope that we can continue to upgrade our professionalism, to upgrade our staff, and to implement those computers and to make this commission as credible as we can. That's the key to it.
I was rather shocked when I first got here. We were facing what happened to be two of the largest cases that the Public Service Commission has ever seen, one being the Bell case and the other the Alabama Power Company case. I really didn't know what to expect when I got to the commission. I had been in the legislature and I'd seen the commission from across the street, but I really didn't know what to expect, and it was quite different from anything I had ever imagined.
There is a new day in Alabama with the makeup of the commission that we've got presently, both the three commissioners and the staff thoroughly investigates utility cases when they come before the commission, and we shall continue that.
So 1982 brings more rate hike requests and more decisions by the commissioners, which will please some and anger others. But the stated goal of the commissioners continues to be more reliable service at the lowest price possible to the customers and a fair and reasonable earning for the utilities. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News at the PSC.
The cover reads Design Memorandum Number 1. Inside are the results of 4 years of work by the Army Corps of Engineers. Plans for cutting a channel in the Coosa River from Montgomery to Gadsden, including locks to bypass 5 dams en route. A $15 million study for a $1 billion+ project. The executive vice president of the Coosa Alabama River Improvement Association Incorporated, Ray Carlson, says although the project was first envisioned in 1890, it was 1945 before the U.S. Congress authorized development of the channel from Mobile to Rome. Then it was another 20 years before money was appropriated for the project. The first section of the waterway was completed in 1972.
So far, we have a 9-foot channel from Mobile up the Alabama River to Montgomery with 3 locks and dams, including 2 generating stations, which are generating power. Now the next phase goes up to Gadsden. And there we have to go through 5 dams, building 5 locks, starting with Walter Bolden.
Walter Bolden Dam, then on to Mitchell, Lay, and Logan Martin dams, and ending with the H. Neely Henry Dam at Gadsden. At each dam, locks will be installed to allow barges to pass. Highways and railroads will have to be moved, and the whole way, a 150-foot wide, 9-foot deep channel cut in the riverbed. The design memorandum released earlier this month includes maps showing details of the whole 163-mile route. But where does the money come from?
Well, the money comes, up to now at least, from the federal government. It's an investment in the future. It's somewhat like the interstate system, the highway system.
Still, Carlson says he's sure the benefits to the region will far exceed the cost.
An industry will locate here. The people will start using the river in ways that had not been anticipated. The main thing is we'll have new jobs for Alabamians.
The project is not without some opposition. Carlson says Alabama Power Company, which operates the 5 dams included in the project, is in favor of the development of the river, but officials have expressed concern about possible losses of power generation capabilities at the dams when the locks are installed. The design includes concerns of some environmental and conservation groups worried that the project and subsequent barge traffic could disturb natural environments and recreational facilities. But overall, Carlson feels the project is viewed favorably. Now, if Congress approves money for continuing development, realization of Design Memorandum Number 1 could start in 1983, and the whole project could be complete by 1990, 100 years from its inception.
And you'd have to look at it as a long-range investment.
Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
was charged.
Consumers Alliance spokesperson Nancy Rawls says Alabama Power Company has collected more than $2.5 billion since the fuel adjustment was put into effect in 1975. The fuel adjustment charge allows the power company to pass on to its customers any increases in fuel costs.
$2,567,169,320. The Consumer Alliance contends that this money was charged illegally to the consumers of the state of Alabama. This not only included the residential customers, but also the commercial and industrial customers.
Mrs. Rawls says the Public Service Commission has no legal authority to grant a fuel adjustment charge to Alabama Power Company.
There is no inherent authority invested in the Public Service Commission outside the specified authority given to them by the statute 37(1), 80, and 81. Covers rates and charges authorized by the public utilities in Alabama. There is no mention nor authority for a fuel adjustment clause or any automatic pass-on feature.
Alabama Power Company spokesman Bryant Allen says the method for recovery of fuel costs has always been determined by the Public Service Commission. In addition, he says the legality of the fuel adjustment charge has been upheld by the courts. PSC Commissioner Lynn Greer says he realizes that the state law to which Mrs. Rawls is referring does not specifically say the PSC has the power to grant fuel adjustments. But he adds that the state law does say the Commission must regulate the utility. In the meantime, Mrs. Rawls says the Consumers Alliance will file its lawsuit against Alabama Power Company as soon as enough funds can be raised to pay attorney's fees. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
To $2,567,169,320. The Consumer Alliance contends that this money was charged illegally to the consumers of the state of Alabama.
Nancy Rawls says the Public Service Commission doesn't have the legal authority to grant Alabama Power Company a monthly fuel adjustment. She referred to the state code in making the charge.
I have 5 questions. I think there is no inherent authority invested in the Public Service Commission outside the specified authority given to them by the statute 37(1), 80, and 81. Covers rates and charges authorized by the public utilities in Alabama. There is no mention nor authority for a fuel adjustment clause or any automatic pass-on feature.
Alabama Power Company spokesman Bryant Allen says the fuel adjustment charge is totally legal and says the method for recovery of fuel cost has always been determined by the Public Service Commission. At the same time, PSC Commissioner Lynn Greer says that even though state law does not specifically say the Commission can grant fuel adjustments, he says the law does say the Commission must regulate the utility. In the meantime, Nancy Rawls says Alabama consumers should receive a refund.
We feel that the Alabama Power Company should pay back every penny that they collected illegally to the consumers of this state.
Mrs. Rawls says the Consumers Alliance intends to file its suit against Alabama Power Company just as soon as attorney's fees can be raised. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
The Sylacauga City Council voted to declare part of the city's business section a disaster area in hopes of obtaining low-interest government loans to rebuild or relocate the destroyed businesses. Sloan says so far his office has not received an official request from Sylacauga for disaster assistance. According to a preliminary report, the total damage is now estimated at $500,000. 3 buildings were destroyed, 40 others received minor damage, and 11 people were left without jobs. Sloan says the preliminary figures don't meet the federal government's criteria for Small Business Administration loans.
Based upon our information, the uninsured loss to the businesses involved is not sufficient to fit into SBA's criteria. There were not enough businesses involved and enough loss that was not insured, and that plays a big factor. Another category that they could fit into, where there are 3 businesses involved, if there's a significant unemployment problem, And that has to be significant because we're talking about 25% of the available workforce, which of course is not the case up there. Because
Despite the figures in the preliminary report, Sloan says his department will reevaluate the damage and make a recommendation to Governor James on whether Sylacauga should be declared a disaster area. Even if James does decide the city needs disaster relief, the federal government will have the ultimate say if federal dollars will go to Sylacauga. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Alabama could be the most crippled up bowl team in Tide history. 6 or perhaps 7 Alabama players out here are either ailing or will miss the game entirely. Eddie Lowe will not play, it appears, and with Thomas Boyd suspended, that leaves the Tide linebacking core in bad shape. Benny Perrin is ailing in the secondary. There could be another Tide secondary player less than 100%, but we can't be sure about that at this time. Warren Lyles at nose guard is ailing. He probably won't be at full speed. Ken Coley still limping. He probably won't play. Alabama's staying here at the Hyatt House in downtown Dallas. They're working out in the early afternoon daily at the Cotton Bowl. By contrast, Texas is staying in far north Dallas. They're working out in the early morning cold, and it has been cold here, at a small high school. The Tide players appear relaxed and easygoing. That 315th victory is now history, and that may be part of it. By contrast again, Texas seems a little more intent. This is their first appearance in the Cotton Bowl in several years, and Fred Akers apparently feels he needs a win. This is Phil Snow reporting from Dallas.
The Texas Longhorns will be making their first Cotton Bowl appearance in 4 seasons. And in the Longhorns' preparation for the New Year's Day encounter against Alabama, attention is focused not only on the Alabama wishbone, but on Crimson Tide coach Bear Bryant.
You know, he's an institution. The man has influenced football, players, coaches, everyone in the country. And it's an honor to be playing against a Bear Bryant coach team.
He's a great coach, and, you know, I would like to see what he has taught his players, you know, and it'll be a great challenge for us.
Alabama has never beaten Texas, and Crimson Tide coach Bryant has won just once himself against the Longhorns, that as coach at Texas A&M in 1956. Those are 2 records Texas coach Fred Akers would like to preserve, even if the man on the Alabama sideline does have 315 coaching victories.
Right. Let us review just the first 2, Ron. I know you have to break here. This is Jim Cool's hit list of grammatical errors. Here are some of the errors which he believes are most oft repeated. And here's a sports example, or a commercial, actually. You don't like the use of the word plus. Write today for the amazing news, Zinger Plus. If you act now, you'll receive. And then on Monday Night Football, you may or may not hear about the running back who gained 8 yards plus. He picks up a first down. 2
plus 2 is 4. That's what plus is good for.
Plus is a mathematical reference.
Yes.
It should not be used as an appendage to...
Yes, don't replace and.
All right. Here's the one we were talking about before. This one is the one with which I think everyone is very familiar. Nobody can do it like McDonald's can. You remember the Winston? Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
When the operators learned of the incident, they sent Mrs. Lois Copeland to deliver the metal cane. Mrs. Copeland works part-time at the hospital and said she would be more than happy to deliver the gift. Mrs. Copeland says, after all, Pinkston set an example of bravery to senior citizens.
I'm going to tell him to. If he will accept this cane on behalf of the Baptist Medical Center operators, and he will pass along his expertise, we will certainly establish a walking cane fund for anybody who has need of one in the future. Thank you. Mr. Pinkston.
Okay.
Mr. Pinkston. Mr. Pinkston. Mr. Pinkston.
Unfortunately, Mr. Pinkston wasn't home at the time, but that did not bother Mrs. Copeland. She said she would return later. Mrs. Copeland says she wants to make sure he gets the gift on behalf of the operators who applauded Mr. Pinkston and his act of courage and bravery. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Package deals are popular this year. Many hotels in town are offering buffet dinners, drinks, champagne, dancing to a live band, a room for the night, and even breakfast the next morning, all for one price. Hotel managers say many couples are taking advantage of these deals because of the price and because if they overdo the celebrating, they won't have to be on the road driving. Speaking of being on the road, state troopers and Montgomery police will both be out in full force looking for drunk drivers. But Montgomery Police Chief Charles Swindle says he doesn't expect any problems or a great number of arrests for driving while under the influence. Some tips for those who will be drinking tonight: pace yourself, have only one drink per hour, and make sure you don't drink on an empty stomach. And if you leave a party, don't drive drunk. Ask a friend to drive you home or call the police department for help. Another tradition on New Year's Eve is fireworks, but in the city limits, they're illegal. Even having them in your possession is illegal. Fire department officials say fireworks are dangerous, and too many children over the years have been injured playing with them. So remember these tips and what the consequences will be if you don't. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News. is the message for black families today.
I would say to the black family living in America today, 4 words: look out and look up. Look out and look up.
Robert says black families face a world of difficulties and devastation, and he urges families to stick together and work together as the only way to survive. Robert says in this violent world today, the peaceful message of the late Dr. Martin Luther King is needed again. Roberts calls Dr. King the man who turned the world upside down with the beginnings of the Montgomery Freedom Movement. Taps was played in remembrance of the movement's forefathers. Roberts urges black men to be faithful to their wives, work at an honorable job, and not be dependent on the government, but be dependent on themselves.
Look out. Make sure when these things are happening that the family stands close together. Look out and make sure that you do those things that you believe God has called upon us to do. For if we do not do this, then our nation will certainly go down in great ruins. It is my hope in the midst of this age where we live, that we might not only look out, but the Bible says when these things happen, look up.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Also have the vertical view.
Yes,
And that name's going to be?
Laquana Shante. Proud and glad. I don't want to do it no more though.
If you had a New Year's
The biggest story in Dallas right now is a guy named Everson Walls. The rookie out of Grambling was an unknown free agent when the season began, but now he leads the league in interceptions and has just been named to the Pro Bowl. Does Tom Landry worry that all this sudden notoriety will affect his performance in Saturday's game with Tampa Bay against an old college teammate, quarterback Doug Williams? Not really. Coach, all the things that's happened to Everson Walls in this year, all the success, all the media blitz, are you concerned about his performance in view of all that?
No, I'm just glad he's getting it all, because he came a long way. He's kind of a Merriwell story, you know. It's tremendous. He was so far from being a pro football player when he started, and he's come so well through the season, and now I tell you, when you make the Pro Bowl game, you've done a great job.
Well, he's not big, he's not particularly fast. How do you account for
Well, he's got a great knack. You know, defensive back doesn't necessarily have to have all the physical traits. They got to have a feel for playing defense, playing the ball, being in the right place, reacting. in there, and he has those things. He reacts quick, he moves quick, he's got a good sense of playing the football when he approaches a receiver. And that offsets a lot of limitation. He doesn't have many limitations. He's pretty good size. You know, he's over 6 feet, and that's pretty good for a defensive back. And he can run about as fast as anybody wants to run with him.
Everson Walls is paid just above the minimum NFL salary, but after his performance this year, it's certain that the Dallas Cowboys will gladly renegotiate his contract. Reporting from the Dallas Cowboys training camp in Dallas, Texas, this is Phil Snow. If the Dallas Cowboys beat Tampa Bay this weekend, you can bet they'll have to get to Doug Williams, the Tampa Bay quarterback, several times. The heart of that Dallas pass rush is All-Pro Randy White. We asked him about Doug Williams' mobility. How does he compare with some of the other quarterbacks in that respect?
Well, you know, I don't know how he compares with some of the other ones, but he's bigger and stronger than most. And he's a durable guy. You know, I've seen him take some shots and get knocked down and get right back up. You know, you think a lot of guys, you know, I know a lot of guys in the league that are quarterbacks wouldn't get up from. So he's a durable quarterback too. And from a defensive lineman standpoint, you know, you got to concern yourself with his scramble ability. You know, when you're rushing him, you know if you hit him, you got to hit him good. You know, you're not going to bring him down with one arm or anything because he's strong. And he creates some added problems for a defensive lineman.
This is Phil Snow reporting from the Dallas Cowboy training camp, Dallas, Texas.
When you've got a man-to-man defense, it would look like it would take you run away. But then when you're a wishbone team, if you prepare properly and if your backs know who to block, then you can pick them up and your wishbone will be just as effective as if it would against a regular team that ran a zone. And another thing that a man coverage does open up is it's an advantage to us as far as with the receivers we've got for a pass.
Expect anything different from Texas? You think they'll dare you to throw it?
Well, I think they will. They play a whole lot of man coverage, and that's about basically what they stick with the whole game. And we've got some real fast receivers like Jesse and Joey, and so if we can just get the ball to them, then we'll be all right.
Is Alabama's bone anything like, say, Oklahoma's?
I'd say they're very, very similar in what they run, but they're more wide open than Oklahoma is. Oklahoma doesn't throw the ball. Even when they should, they don't throw the ball. When Alabama will throw on first downs, and they're more diversified. They keep you off balance a lot better.
You know, just like that in our Auburn game also, you know, they came out and, you know, did a shuffle pass on them and ended up scoring on the thing. And that's the kind of thing they do good, you know, and they hit you right, you know, it can go all the way with it.
Charles Mims, the owner of a trucking company, was last seen on the evening of December 14th. His family members became worried when he didn't return home that night and began looking for him. Chilton County Sheriff James Johnson says he suspects foul play and thinks Charles Mims is dead.
This truck was found the following morning on December the 15th, about 2 or 3 miles out on the Kingston Road, west of Kleinert. He was reported to us missing that same morning, approximately around 11 a.m.
Mims' orange 1980 Ford pickup was found parked at this church campground. Sheriff Johnson says there was no indication of a struggle.
The truck was found with keys in it. The windows were rolled down approximately halfway. At that present time, we feel like there's probably foul play involved. The Mims subject hadn't been seen since then. Has been on intensive investigation since that time.
Investigators impounded Mims' truck and have gone over it with a fine-tooth comb, looking for clues. But so far, nothing has been found to indicate the whereabouts of Mims. Investigators and sheriff's deputies, along with more than 500 volunteers, have searched the surrounding area near the church where Mims' truck was found. A pond behind the church was dragged as well, but there was no sign of Mims' body. Mims' wife, Faye, is hoping her husband is alive, but fears for the worst.
And he seemed happy enough. It didn't seem like anything was bothering him.
Do you think he's still alive?
I want to hang on to all the hope I can that he is, but it's seems like now such a slim possibility. I don't really think so.
Thus far, 150 people have been questioned. 15 have been given lie detector tests, still without positive results. Sheriff Johnson says Mims will continue to be just a missing person until enough evidence can be gathered to suggest otherwise. Sheriff Mims says robbery could be the motive for Mims' disappearance. He says Mims was known to have carried large sums of money and was believed to have had $3,000 in his possession. Mims' family has posted a $1,000 reward for information concerning Mims' whereabouts. In the meantime, Chilton County Sheriff's investigators will continue looking for clues. From Clanton, Alabama, Dan Black, WSFA TV News. State troopers say the Christmas-New Year's holiday season is the most dangerous time of the year to be on the road. Not only because of more traffic than usual, but because 1 out of every 10 drivers you meet is drunk. Troopers say with a combination of drunkenness, crowded roads, and high rates of speed, fatalities and injuries are almost inevitable. Trooper E.S. Maggard says the remaining few hours of the New Year's weekend will be hazardous. However, he says there are some precautions motorists can take to ensure safety while traveling back home.
Early start is the main thing. Drive defensively and think about next Christmas and how much you'd like to spend the holidays with your family.
Trooper Maggard says many drivers don't slow down during hazardous driving conditions resulting from rain, slick roads. He says that's another major contributing factor to accidents. Maggard says despite the 55-mile-per-hour speed limit, only about half of the motoring public obeys the law.
We do have some conscientious citizens that do care about their lives and to conserve energy, but the main factor is lives. That's what we're interested in. We're very proud of the Christmas weekend with a 0 fatality. That meant an awful lot to us in the state of Alabama, I'm sure.
Officer Maggard says if you want to avoid this scene, don't drink and drive or speed, because he says otherwise, sooner or later, you'll get caught, or even worse, killed. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
The Longhorns got on the board on this 30-yard quarterback draw by Robert Brewer. It capped a 60-yard drive and was a brilliant call to take advantage of Alabama's hotly pursuing blitz. With 10:22 remaining, Alabama's lead was cut to 10-7, and the momentum was swinging with Texas. After Alabama failed to move, the Longhorns marched 80 yards to their winning score. Most of the yardage through the air, and most on big completions on 3rd and long, like this one to tight end Lawrence Sampleton, good to the Alabama 43. When Terry Orr took it over from 2 yards out with 2:05 remaining, Texas had a 14-10 lead, but even then it wasn't over for Alabama. After Joey Jones took the kickoff back to the Texas 38, Alabama had a golden opportunity to win it. But that was quickly gone when quarterback Walter Lewis misfired a long pass into the end zone. Safety Willie Graham stepped